Tonight's presentation is called Preserving Family Photos and Heirlooms with Kate Jacus. Kate is the preservation specialist for Documentary, Heritage, and Preservation Services for New York, conducting preservation needs assessments and educational programs for libraries and archival repositories in New York State. She also provides photo organizing and collections management services to families through her business, The Photo Curator. Previously, she was the marketing coordinator for Archival Methods, a supplier of archival storage and presentation supplies. Her past museum work includes collections manager at the Strong in Rochester, New York, and membership assistant at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. Kate lives in Brighton with her family, and we're really so happy to have you guide us on some things that will help us preserve our family memories as we sit in our houses this winter and wonder what we should be doing with our time, which I think is a great thing to do. So take it away, Kate, and everybody, if you could go on mute out of respect for the presentation, and if you have questions, put them in the text chat, or we can take them at the end of Kate's presentation. Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Drew. That was a great intro. Appreciate that. Very timely, certainly, to be talking about preserving family heirlooms. As Drew mentioned, we are kind of hibernating at home more this time of year and thinking about projects we can do inside rather than outside. And then also thinking about the news from California, those crazy wildfires, which is something that we luckily don't really have here, but just another reminder that this kind of work is so critical to saving your family legacy before anything, any kind of any other disaster we might experience happens. So really a good time to start this is any time, and something that certainly takes a while, but it's easy to kind of work on piecemeal. So I'm going to kind of talk through some things tonight. Let me share my screen here, and I'm going to go off camera and just be talking, and then I will come back on camera at the end to take questions and have some conversations. So, all right. So the title of tonight's presentation is Preserving Family Photos and Heirlooms. We'll do a little bit of an introduction. I will talk through kind of a roadmap or a template you can use to think about kind of breaking up an archival, family history project. We will also talk a little bit about the science behind archival storage, what it means just for something to be archival. And we'll explore some storage options for common items, photos, and family heirlooms that you might have. And then at the end, I've got some resources for you, and we can do a Q&A. So just a quick background, I have been in the museum world for all of my career. This is kind of a few of the places that I have worked, mostly in collections, not entirely, but mostly behind the scenes working with collections. It's my favorite place to be in a museum. Currently, I am doing preservation assessments for little institutions around New York State. It's a program called Documentary Heritage and Preservation Services. We call it DIPSNY for short, a funny acronym. And it's a really great program, a joint collaboration between the New York State Archives and the New York State Library. And it provides funds for kind of collections management services around New York State to little historical societies and libraries and archives. So if anyone here is involved in another organization, and actually maybe this is something that this historical society might be interested in, there's archival needs assessments, there's preservation assessments, a number of things that this organization DIPSNY offers. So Drew, maybe we can touch base afterwards about that. I also have worked for Archival Methods, which is a local manufacturer and supplier of archival storage and presentation supplies. And I have a business very much on the side at this point, kind of doing collections management for families. So let's start with kind of a project roadmap. Before we go into more details about archival storage, we just kind of have to step back and think about the project as a whole. We're all here because we love family history. Usually that means that we have a lot of stuff, whether that's just photos or you've got some family heirlooms as well. And it really makes sense to have a plan for dealing with the different stages of a big project like this. So setting some goals and outlining some steps can keep you on track, since these projects can get overwhelming very quickly. I've developed or, kind of outlined here a roadmap or a template that I call the 4 Ds of your preservation project. And those are decide, document, digitize, and determine. This framework can help you break down a project into more manageable chunks. And we'll go through each step in a little more detail. And one thing to note here, while this framework is applicable to digital photos as well, today's presentation really just focuses on printed photos, analog media, and family heirlooms. I'm not going to even delve into the digital side of things tonight. So, all right, the first step here, deciding what to keep. So it's easiest to make decisions about what photos and family heirlooms to keep when you have everything or almost everything in front of you. So a good place to start is by gathering everything in one place. So photos, family heirlooms, memorabilia. It's helpful here to designate kind of a temporary workspace in your home where you can spread things out somewhere that can remain undisturbed for a while, if that's possible. Making an inventory, a list of everything is helpful here. This is certainly the items you want to include in the scope of your project. But there's going to be things that you want to include in your project that you can't physically gather. Maybe there's things, hanging on the wall or family heirlooms that another relative has. Those are the types of things that can also be added to kind of an overall inventory or list of everything that you have. So having this inventory just helps you kind of look at the scope of the project and helps you decide what can be tackled first. You can kind of check things off as you organize or digitize them. So it's nice to kind of have a master list once you've gathered everything in one place. In a lifetime of family photos, there are for sure many, many that you do not need to keep. And if you're going to be investing in digitizing and storing them, you want to be sure that you're only paying to manage the ones that you really want to keep, the ones that best document your family stories. Sometimes you'll have albums or groups of photos where you want to keep them all. But I'm willing to bet that most of us also have boxes of unsorted prints from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. So this is the time to go through them. And there's a little bit of an acronym that we use in the photo organizing world called the ABCs of photo organizing. And it's a way to kind of help you quickly go through large amounts of photos and make quick decisions about what to keep and what to toss. So if you think about A as photos that are your best photos, they would go into an album. Or there are A, like the letter grade photos. These are images that you want to share with your friends and family. They're really the best ones that you have in your collection. B photos are kind of classified as important to keep, but it's maybe photos that you'd want to keep in a box, like stored away. Maybe you've digitized them, and now you can keep them in a box for the long term. They don't need to be in an album or on display, like the A photos. And then C for ABC is the word can. And so, yes, you can throw photos into the trash can. It's kind of how we talk about it here. It's okay to throw photos away, to part with, poor quality images, to part with duplicates, to part with landscape shots, blurry sunsets. So just giving yourself permission to actually toss photos into the can is the C of this. And then the S for the plural ABCs is the word stories. Does the photo tell a story you want to remember? It may not be the perfect picture. It may not be a great picture falling into the A or the B category, but maybe it tells a funny or poignant story of a moment in time of your family history. So that also is a photo that you should keep. Now that you've decided what to keep, step 2 is to start documenting what you have. This obviously includes your photos, but also your objects and your family heirlooms, and even just family stories that you want to get down on paper. For all of these, you want to be able to capture kind of the basic who, what, when, where, and why. It is, okay to write on the backs of photos. We recommend using pencil to do that. There are certain kinds of pencils that work better than others. for writing on the backs of photos, you don't want to use kind of any kind of pen or inks, even if they say they're archival inks. Really just best to keep those off of your photos. And it's really good to just kind of write that kind of the caption, if you will, of the photo on the back. And then after you've digitized the photo, you can kind of connect that information into the metadata of a digital photo down the road. And then it becomes searchable and really becomes embedded in your collection. So good to have those details on the printed photos before you digitize them. You can also just take notes on storage envelopes. If you're storing your photos, maybe they're still in the photo lab envelope for the short term, that's fine as you're working through the project. So taking notes on those are great. And then also recording voice memos or videos on your phone of going through your pictures and taking notes can also help. And then sometimes you've got family stories that aren't necessarily connected to the photos or the objects that you are working on as part of this project. And these are just kind of important to capture as well. So just as a kind of a sidebar here, there are some really great online services that can help with this, documenting family stories. You should check out websites like StoryCorps, or there's an app called Artifacts, or Hey Artifact. Is there. You can just Google that and you'll find them. You can Google questions to ask your family and use your voice recorder on your phone to kind of have family answer those questions. It's also great to kind of take a video of family members going through photo albums and naming people and places and events and talking about them and sharing memories. So even using your phone is fine for this. If the audio is one thing to use, if you can capture some video, it's even better. And then you can save these digital files alongside your digital photos and just have a really great kind of addition of family stories to go with your photo collection. So the third step of this kind of roadmap for tackling a family archive project is digitization. So the benefits of digitizing your photographs and taking images of your heirlooms are great. By scanning the photos and photographing or taking video of your objects and heirlooms, you'll create a backup and you'll make for easy sharing with family and friends. The scanner pictured here is just a very kind of basic Epson flatbed scanner. It's very reasonably priced, and it's kind of just a workhorse scanner to have for things that are letter size and smaller. If you have a lot to digitize, I always recommend seeking the assistance of professionals, whether that's a photo lab that does scanning or a professional photo organizer. The investment there is well worth the time. Well worth it for the time savings alone of not having to personally scan all of your photos and kind of family documents. If you have home movies to digitize, that's usually a job for the pros unless you have that kind of equipment at home. I like to recommend Media Transfer Service in East Rochester. They do a great job of digitizing all kinds of film and media. So storage for digital images falls under the backup category. Did I mention backup on this? I didn't. Sorry about that. So after you've converted your old media and scanned images, you want to make sure that you are backing up those newly created digital images kind of as part of your computer system. We like to talk about having a 3-2-1 backup plan. And that translates to kind of having 3 copies of your photo collection stored on 2 different types of media, and one of which should be off-site. So if you have, say, a copy of your photo collection on your computer, on the hard drive inside your computer, you could make a copy of that on an external hard drive. And then you could also put a copy into cloud storage, whether that's iCloud or Google Photos. And the cloud storage counts as somewhere off-site. So that would cover your 3-2-1 backup. So just having redundancies in place to make sure that your digital images are safe. All right, now we'll go next slide here. Sorry about that. So as I mentioned, we just talked about storing digital images as kind of the backup situation we just talked about, but you'll also want to plan for storage of the printed photos and the family heirlooms that you are keeping. And that's what really we're going to talk about for the rest of this presentation here. And we'll get into this in just a few slides here. And then sharing, so the last category of this roadmap is determine. So determine storage, we just talked about it, and then determine sharing. So sharing your collection can happen in lots of different ways. You can do video slideshows, make online galleries, make photo books or albums, framing or otherwise displaying photos and heirlooms, sending originals to family members. You get the idea. So just it's well worth the the time to do all this when you get the joy of kind of being able to share this family legacy with extended family members. So that's kind of why we do all this. So lots of ways to do it, and then figuring out a plan for that is really the last segment of this family archive project. So archival storage for the printed photos and the heirlooms that you are going to keep is really just one piece, as we talked about, of the larger family history project, but it's an important one. So archival storage means that you are storing objects and photos in containers that will not do them any harm, that will help preserve them. So like regular cardboard boxes, photo boxes, or corrugated or binders, just from the office supply store, are made of materials that over the long term are going to damage your photos and objects with off-gassing and kind of deteriorating and just not being safe storage for the long term. Things can get discolored. It can lead to little microenvironments that lead to mold growth or pest infestation. Nothing you want to happen to your heirlooms. So I wanted to quickly go over some of the most common archival terms, what they mean, and then how to use this information when you're making storage purchasing decisions. So acid-free is a very common term that I'm sure we've all heard about. So we all are kind of pretty familiar with the concept of the fact that there's acids in wood pulp and that end up in the paper that we buy, or that boxes are made out of, or photo album pages, all kinds of paper that that comes into contact with our photos and heirlooms. But acid-free paper means that those acids are removed during the paper making process, and that paper has a neutral pH. If you remember back to high school chemistry, that kind of pH just means that it's not going to affect or harm your objects that you're storing in it, and your photos that you're storing in it in any way. So acid-free is a term to certainly look out for as you're purchasing storage supplies. Lignin-free is another term that's fairly common these days. Lignin is an important part of the structure of wood. It actually forms the cell walls of wood. But as those molecules are exposed to oxygen, kind of in the paper making process, they become less stable, absorb more light, and start to kind of turn yellow. And that's what makes paper yellow. So when you're making archival quality paper, the lignin gets removed. So you'll see that word lignin-free also when you're looking at archival storage products. Buffering or buffered paper is another reference that you'll often see when it comes to archival storage. This relates to storage papers, to cardboard, to tissue paper. So buffered paper, instead of being a neutral pH, just kind of like your basic regular acid-free paper, it has a little bit of a higher pH. It's more alkaline, and that is because calcium carbonate, like that in the picture here, is added to the paper during production. And that kind of small percentage of calcium carbonate embedded into the paper or the cardboard or the tissue helps to neutralize other acids in the environment that normally would make that paper become acidic over time. So acids can migrate from neighboring boxes, from things that you're storing, other things you're storing in a box. So just even the environment around the box. So a buffered box really just helps, just another way of helping kind of preserve the photos and the objects that you're storing inside it. So buffered paper goes along with acid-free and lignin-free as a term that you'll want to look out for. So moving on from paper and cardboard or boxboard, plastic is another archival storage option. There are 3 types of plastics that are inert and suitable for long-term preservation. These are polyester, polyethylene, and polypropylene. Polyester is also known as the brand name Mylar, and you'll see polypropylene is often made into plastic storage bins that you'll find at like the box stores. So any of those 3 plastics are completely safe for long-term archival storage. You want to make sure that you're not using plastics that either are not identified or have the word vinyl in them, like PVA or PVC, polyvinyl chloride. Those are terrible, will off-gas and just kind of turn yellow and harden and just be very damaging to photos in the long run. So just remembering that these 3 types of plastic are qualities or are the materials that you want to look for when you're choosing plastic-based archival storage materials. I also want to mention that besides the material composition, the design of storage is another element that makes it archival. You can see this most clearly in boxes here. These are pretty basic metal edge archival boxes here, and they've got this metal banding on the edges that helps with keep the box rigid. If you're stacking a few of them high, having those metal edges will ensure that the weight of the box is stacked up, does not crumple the corners of the box, so it keeps the contents safer. And then you'll also see on this box that's open in the picture, there's what we call a drop front. So one side is not connected to the other sides and folds down for easy access, kind of sliding photos or documents or whatever you're storing in and out from that open front, as opposed to kind of jamming your fingers down the side to dig something out. So just a safer way to access photos. So just this example of 2 design elements that are found on archival boxes that you wouldn't necessarily find in other kind of just generic storage boxes. So buying from reputable archival suppliers is critical. If you are making the investment in archival materials for your family archive, you want to make sure that you are getting the right type of materials that have, those, you're looking for those terms that we just talked about: acid-free, lignin-free, buffered, those different kinds of plastics. Those are specifications that should be outlined in the product description wherever you're purchasing your archival supplies from. You will find lots of storage boxes and photo albums and things at kind of big box stores, and they may be labeled like photo safe or acid free, but there's no further description. There's no other listing of specifications, so it's just not something that you should trust with the long-term storage of your family heirlooms. So you want to shop somewhere that is going to provide detailed product information, detailed specifications. You don't need to remember the exact pH or any of the real details, but you want to be able to see that information is listed. So all the good archival suppliers will share this information. So making sure that you are buying from a place that provides this detail is important. So that was a quick overview of the properties of archival storage materials. Just as important as the storage materials is the environment that the photos or your other objects or heirlooms are stored in. That environment is defined as layers of protection. The more layers surrounding an object, the less chance it will be affected by physical forces, by light, by dust, by pests, and the more stable its environment. So each successive layer or enclosure further stabilizes the object or the photo's environment. So when we think about these layers of protection, we really start with the home. The top layer of protection for photos or objects is your house or wherever these things are being stored, the structure and the systems inside it. You want to be sure to store your photos and heirlooms in a climate controlled area. So this means kind of a relatively stable temperature between 60 and 75 degrees, a relative humidity of in general 35 to 55%. And as long as things aren't fluctuating beyond those ranges, it's a fairly safe environment for your family archive. You want to just not store things in anywhere in this photo that's grayed out. So that would be basements and attics and garages. They just do not have the climate control or to support safe storage of photos and heirlooms. They're more susceptible to dust and pests and physical damage. So really your photos want to live where you live, in the climate controlled part of your house. All right, now let's talk about making some storage decisions. I'd like to say that any archival storage is better than none. As we just talked about, those layers of protection, kind of, the starting with the house, and then it goes to kind of maybe the bookshelf or, the closet that you're storing something in as another layer of protection. And then the container level, the box that you're storing things in, is another layer of protection. And often all you need to store your photos and family heirlooms is a box, a simple box. It's excellent protection from light, from dust, from pests. And sometimes that's all you need, or sometimes that's all that fits your budget. But there are occasions where your items might need a little extra protection in what we call individual enclosures, which is protection inside that you would put something in and then, then put it inside a box. So another thing you want to think about as you're planning your storage is how often things will be accessed. Sometimes we store away our photos to preserve that, we scan them and we store them away high on a closet shelf. We don't need to touch them for years. We don't need to go through them because we're working with the digital images that we've scanned. And sometimes you want the photos and memorabilia more accessible. And that's when you can think about binders or photo albums or, or scrapbooks, that things you want to see on a more regular basis. So that also will factor into decisions of storage, thinking about how often you want to access things. And then again, talking about those enclosures, this is kind of individual protection for the items that you're putting in that box. And so when I'm talking about enclosures, and you'll see this in the slides coming up here, I'm talking about folders, I'm talking about a plastic sleeve, a plastic bag, wrapping something in tissue paper. Again, not every object or photograph in your collection will need individual enclosures, but some will. And then kind of a good time to identify items that you think might need a little extra protection is when you're doing that initial sort, when you're gathering everything and kind of taking that inventory of your collection. You can take notes on things that when you're ready to purchase storage might need a little extra protection. And there are certain objects, a few examples here, where the object itself will kind of help you decide if it needs an individual enclosure. Things like negatives are really delicate and should be in enclosures to protect them from physical damage. If you've got cased photographs or tintypes, they also often do best in individual enclosures inside a box, just to protect their delicate cases, to protect the tintypes from being scratched. If you've got newspapers, they of course are kind of the worst offenders when it comes to acid and yellowing. And so 100% they have to be stored kind of by themselves and in individual enclosures, just to separate them in their bad acid from everything else. If you've got things that are friable, which means the media is kind of crumbly or flaky, they should all be in individual enclosures to keep those flakes, together on the paper. So if you've got chalk portraits or pastel, charcoal artwork, pencil drawings, even tempera paint artwork from kids easily crumbles and flakes off. So again, putting those in individual enclosures keeps all those pieces together. And speaking of keeping pieces together, if you've got scrapbooks or photo albums that are especially old and fragile, they usually benefit from some kind of individual enclosure besides being in a box, really just to keep pages together, keep photos or ephemera from falling out, kind of keeping a spine together, or keeping those crumbling bits together. So kind of wrapping that separately before you put it in the box is helpful. And then finally, letters are off, especially if they come with envelopes and you want to keep multiple pages and envelopes together. Individual enclosures are an easy way to do that. And then thinking about its condition will also help you decide if you need extra protection of individual enclosures. If something is really fragile, certainly it needs extra support and should be stored by itself in an enclosure. If a photo potentially has residue from being peeled out of a photo album or has tape on it or grime, they should be kind of separated out from the other photos in a little plastic sleeve or something. We'll look at these options in a few minutes here. And then obviously mold is a huge issue with some people's collections. If you've had them stored in kind of not so great locations, mold, there can be evidence of active mold or inactive mold. In either case, you really should keep that completely separate from the rest of your collection until you have consulted a conservator or another professional about how to handle the mold situation. That's something you do not want to mess with. So putting that in a sealed Ziploc bag temporarily is a great way to deal with that. Keep that separate until in its own enclosure until you can get a consultation about how to treat it. All right, so that is a lot of background for kind of the good stuff here, which is how to actually store common types of photos and family heirlooms. So we're going to go through some different types of enclosures and how they fit inside, how things fit inside them, and then also go inside boxes. So there are often several types of options for what type of enclosure works for a certain object. Certainly cost can be a factor. Finding the correct size, if you're storing something in a box versus a binder. So lots of options, and we'll hopefully go through enough examples here to give you a good sense of what is out there and how you might begin to store some of your archive. All right, so first thing is the easy stuff here. Modern prints, kind of the 4x6s, the 5x7 prints that we all have from the photo lab from the last couple decades. If they are in good condition, you can simply stack them together in an archival box. It's easy to find ones that are shoebox sized and can hold 900 or 1,000 prints. You can get dividers for kind of organizing different sections. You can get these acid-free envelopes that mimic kind of the photo lab envelopes. If you want more organization, you can see those in this image here. This is really a great option if you've digitized your photos and you really just want to access them online, but you're keeping the originals also as a backup. They can count as one of your 3-2-1 backup. Keeping those originals kind of packed away on a high shelf in a closet, for safekeeping. You're really not going to flip through them in this box. They're just stored away. And again, if you want to flip through your prints more often, perhaps using a binder with archival page protectors. There's plenty of options for archival photo albums, or making archival scrapbooks is an option if you want to see things more often. And again, isolating any pictures that are fragile or have any residue or tape or ink on them, in their own plastic sleeve, or or you can just put slip a piece of archival paper in between them to separate them from the rest of the stack of photos. So negatives here, because they are delicate, they really benefit from being in individual enclosures before you put them into a box or a binder. You can also store them in envelopes alongside the prints, like in the box on the previous slide. There was the those kind of envelopes that look like the Photo Lab envelopes. They have pockets in the front to store negatives if you are keeping them with the actual set of prints. If you're just storing lots of negatives, there's options for storing them in boxes with page protectors, and archival suppliers will make them in all different sizes for large format negatives, for 35 millimeter, for smaller ones. So anything that you have, you can find specific negative storage in either envelope options or page protector options. If you've got larger prints, envelopes or plastic sleeves are a good way to store them if they are fragile or otherwise need some protection before you put them into a box. If they are in good condition, they don't need to be in an individual enclosure, and you can just stack them in a box like you would for kind of the 4x6 prints. The larger prints will do better stored flat, but you can also store them upright in a document box. And I have an image of that in a few slides, so I can show you that. If you do put them in individual enclosures, a paper envelope allows plenty of room for labeling and is less expensive, while a plastic sleeve will cost a little more, but affords visibility without handling the photo. So some cost benefit to weigh there. If you've got vintage prints, photos on printed on or mounted on cardboard, so cartes de visite or cabinet cards, things like that, because they have that cardboard backing, they should automatically get their own enclosures, because that cardboard backing is not archival, obviously, and if you just stack them together, that cardboard will start to damage the face of the photo that's stacked behind it. So plastic sleeves are great here, so you can see the photo without kind of having to take it in and out of a paper envelope. You can see a few of these here in this image have some acid-free cardstock slipped behind the photo for extra support. You can also write the photo information on that insert. And then this next slide here is actually a quick video that I'm going to play. I have a number of videos throughout the rest of the presentation here that are just short little clips of how to store certain types of materials. This next one is about the larger prints we looked at, and then these smaller vintage prints and how to put them into a box. And so some of these have some archival methods branding to them because they were made for archival methods, kind of just product pages to kind of help, just give a little bit more information about a product. And some are just the video clips. So you'll see a mix here, but see if I can get this video to play. And there's not sound, so I'm just going to kind of talk over it. So you can see here, this is some damaged or fragile prints that were put into plastic sleeves. Those are the individual enclosures. And here is a cabinet card being slid into a plastic sleeve with that cardstock behind it for support. You can just stack these in a box. Again, here's a plastic sleeve. If you have something on the back, it's nice to not put that cardstock in so you can see the back of it. And then if you've got photos that are still in those folders from the photo studio, usually they're pretty hard to take out, so it's just worth putting in a piece of archival tissue to protect the face of that photo, and interleaving that and placing that in the box as well. So this would be a great storage box for some of your larger vintage prints. Oh, now I got to get out of here. Hang on. How do I get out of this? And okay, this next slide is a kind of a video showing how the same phototypes you were talking about could be stored in a binder. There's lots of options from archival suppliers for different size or page protectors or photo pages with different size openings for 5x6 or 5x6, 5x7, 4x6, 8.5 by 11. So this is just an example of lots of different things you can store in a binder. This binder here is called a binder in a box. It's a specific product made by Archival Methods. It kind of combines the best of both worlds. A box, a sturdy box with that's completely enclosed on all sides with the kind of accessibility of a binder, kind of a neat product. All right, great. Now I got over to the next one. Slides is the next thing that we're going to talk about. So many of us have slides. Perhaps they're even still in the carousels. It's really best to get them out of those carousels, or if they're stored in those metal storage boxes, or maybe they're still in the photo lab boxes. None of those options are good for long-term storage. Archival suppliers will make specific boxes to fit slides. You can see them here. And they come with dividers and little caddies to separate different sections, so you can get them very organized, and it will greatly reduce their storage footprint. And I've got another video for you here. This was an Archival Methods little branded video, but you can see a close-up here of those slide boxes, and this is how they fit into a larger box. And I think this particular box stores 2,500, 2,400 slides, and it's not much bigger than a shoebox. So really reducing the footprint of slide storage, and really just generally safer storage for them. We don't need to see that again. Sorry. There we go. When we're talking about scrapbooks and albums, so many of us have those with the old black paper pages. Really best to keep these intact unless they are really completely crumbling and falling apart. Part of the kind of inherent value of a scrapbook or a photo album is the fact, it's kind of initial or its original order, if you will. So kind of the fact that somebody put it together in a very specific way, perhaps added captions, perhaps added ephemera. It's best to really not take that apart, because the whole thing as a whole tells an important story. So you can certainly scan the pages if it's something that you could take apart and scan individual pages. That's fantastic. And sometimes I'll recommend to folks, if they want it to be something that is accessible and they can look at frequently, that we make a copy of the album kind of as a modern photo book, like a digitally printed photo book, and then store away the original kind of to preserve it. So you're not having to handle those fragile pages and worry about things falling out of the album or scrapbook. And I've got another quick video here. This is how you options for kind of wrapping a vintage album just loosely in archival plastic bags. You don't want to seal them. So kind of, keeping some airflow. I'm kind of putting some, that went really quick. Hang on. I'm going to play it again here. Having some archival tissue kind of crumpled around the sides to make sure the book doesn't slide around, taking up extra space. So this would be a great way to store kind of any vintage albums that you have after you have digitized them. So I'm going to run through that one twice. It was so fast. Hopefully you got a good picture of that. Oh, not again. There we go. We talked about newspapers and newspaper clippings being very acidic and really kind of very easily yellowing other things that are touching them, or degrading other things in your collection. So they really should be isolated in boxes by themselves. You can put them individually in plastic sleeves or plastic bags, as you see here, and then put them into to boxes or binders if you've just got newspaper clippings. You want to make sure that you scan or copy them before storing, because these are the things in your collection that will deteriorate the fastest. I think we've all seen old newspapers. Sometimes they last really well, but sometimes they really don't, and they crumple. and start to tear at the where they're folded. So best to scan or copy the sections or the information that you want out of them, and then store them individually in plastic bags or sleeves, separate from other things in your collection. When we're talking about memorabilia, this is just kind of the every, souvenirs and programs and all kinds of ephemera that maybe you've kept, from family events or your travels. This is very easily organized in folders or envelopes. You can write, lots of information about, where these came from on the outside. If you have it, you can interleave things with acid-free tissue kind of inside a folder here, or use plastic sleeves for extra protection. These folders look like regular kind of office supply store manila folders, but they are archival. Any archival supplier will have them. And then also in this picture is a vertical storage box. We call this a document box. And if things are in good shape and sturdy, and can easily sorted into folders to kind of separate them in the box, it's a nice storage option, and it doesn't take up as much space on a shelf as a kind of a horizontal storage box. So a nice option if you've got lots of family documents or or memorabilia and ephemera to store. And then letters and envelopes. So certainly something that you want to keep together as much as possible. If you are storing them in a document box, like in the previous slide, keeping letters together with their envelopes in folders, kind of each one gets its own folder, is a good way to keep those pages and the envelopes together. You can also use page protectors in a binder to keep pages of a letter together and keep the envelope with it. If you are, often kind of taking these out and referring to them, there might be a chance that pages get separated. You can write kind of an identification number on each page of a letter and an envelope so that you know that those all go together. Just a little way to kind of make sure that you could put them back together if they got separated. So important to keep letters and their envelopes together. And some, boxes or binders work for that. Briefly here, we'll talk about case photos. So daguerreotypes or ambrotypes, they are certainly fragile enough that each one should be in its own bag, like a little plastic or archival plastic bag. It's not sealed, but it's just kind of another layer of protection for these fragile cases. They should be stored closed. If you are missing the cover for the case, you can put a piece of acid-free kind of matte board or acid-free corrugated board over that face to protect the glass, and then store these again, each in their own individual enclosure inside an archival box. And then finally, we really haven't talked that much about objects today here, and a little bit of family heirloom mention here. But if you are storing a family heirloom objects, which can be anything from kind of personal effects to military medals to sports gear, all kinds of certainly family heirlooms people keep. A good way to store them is using these, again, archival boxes. You see the metal edges here. You can often buy them with dividers inside the boxes to kind of help you organize, smaller things into a bigger box. You can use acid-free tissue to provide padding and to take up space in a box so things aren't sliding around. This is a situation here. This box, you can see there's actually photos stored with little books and with some personal articles. So just kind of, being efficient with your storage, and you can mix and match, photo storage with other things. If, you don't have, if you don't need a huge box for photos, you can certainly store them in with other objects. And I've got one more short video here that is, again, Archival Methods branded, but this is a product called the Compartment Kit. I'm hearing the sound. I'm not sure if you are, though. Oh, maybe it doesn't have sound anymore. So you can just see how these, all right, well, there was some sound on that one, so I'm not sure if you heard the sound. I never know if that actually goes through or not, but I guess it was a good representation, though, of how to safely pack up objects for storage. Oh, let's go back. All right, so I am going to wrap up here with just a slide about resources. These are some links that are helpful for kind of just preservation information in general. Archival methods, that local retailer I mentioned. Their website is obviously all their products are available on their website, but they also have a great blog with very useful posts about different types of kind of family history projects and storage projects. And they also have a preservation guide for photographs and heirlooms, which is available. You can get it in print for like a maybe $2, or you can also view it as a PDF with this bit.ly link here. That top link is will take you right to the PDF of that preservation guide. And then their website, it's pretty easy to find the blog on there, and lots of great resources on that website. If you are interested in purchasing from them, they have a manufacturing facility on Driving Park Avenue on the other side of the city. And they don't have like retail space, but if you order things online, you can select local pickup and save yourself some shipping. And then another resource I wanted to mention is kind of a month-long initiative called Save Your Photos Month. It's run by an organization called the Photo Managers, which is the kind of industry association for photo organizers. And every year in September, they run this kind of month-long campaign to provide just free information about all different kinds of photo organizing, whether it's digital or with your printed photos, making photo books, and information about scanning and different types of scanning options. Just a wealth of free information. There's no fee for any of the webinars, and there's live events throughout the month. Really a great resource if you're working on a family photo project. So you can sign up for this at saveyourphotos.org, and you'll get information towards September when all of those events throughout the month, kind of mini classes and webinars and live events happen. So that is the resources I want to leave you with. I'm going to stop my screen share and put my video back on. And I am happy to answer questions if anybody has them. Thanks for your time tonight. So I guess if you got questions, just go off mute, and I don't see anything in the chat. So
Yep, there's nothing in
yeah,
the chat, but we encourage people to ask questions and go
yeah,
off mute if you'd like. It was fabulous. Thank you so much.
great, thank you. Yeah,
It was fabulous. Thank you so much. My question
sure.
has to do with gloves. Some of the videos showed the person wearing gloves, and sometimes there weren't gloves.
Yes, yes.
What's your recommendation, and does the kind of gloves you use, because a lot of gloves are vinyl, so if you can just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just, as I was putting this this is a presentation of that I've done. I tweak it kind of for every place that I do it. And I actually took out a slide this afternoon about gloves, and maybe I should have kept it in, but I'm happy to talk about gloves. So the kind of prevailing wisdom about using gloves is that you should definitely use them when you're handling photographs, because they are so susceptible. The emulsion, it's so susceptible to oils on our hands. Even if you have clean, dry hands, those fingerprints will show up decades later. So if you're handling photographs, using gloves is really a best practice. Gloves are also great if you're handling kind of family heirlooms that are metal or leather, or objects that kind of are a little more susceptible to again those oils on our hands. And then for just about everything else, clean, dry hands are perfectly fine. And that means your, documents, paper, books, fabric, and kind of just the gamut of kind of other heirlooms, glass, ceramic, china, all that. So pretty much if it's metal or leather or photos, you want to have gloves on, and everything else, just make sure your hands are clean and dry. The two main types of gloves, obviously, are kind of the old school white cotton gloves that we often saw curators wearing, 10 years ago. That has really shifted mostly to professionals wearing those nitrile gloves, which are kind of the medical grade gloves that we all are familiar with thanks to COVID. So they're non-vinyl, but they are latex. You can get latex-free ones. They're not latex, they're nitrile, but there are sometimes latex gloves, which some people might need to be aware of. But the nitrile gloves really are ones I have on hand all the time. And when I'm handling photos, that's what I reach for, because they're thinner. You have a better kind of, dexterity with them. Those cotton gloves can be a little hard to really work with, delicate photos and handling edges of photos and things. And nitrile gloves also provide actually protection for your hands if you're handling potentially moldy photographs or heirlooms, or there's stuff on it that you don't know what it is. A cotton glove isn't going to provide an actual barrier. So that is my recommendation. Have a box of nitrile gloves on hand, use it when you're doing your photos, and then everything else, just make sure your hands are clean. So hopefully that's helpful.
We have a
I see.
question about photographs and storing them. We go to buy sleeves a lot of times and they'll say acid-free. Do we need archival quality, or is acid-free good enough for a photo? Or what's the standard for a photo?
Yeah, so if you're buying something that just says acid-free and doesn't give you like any other specifications about, the type of plastic it is, or, kind of how it was manufactured, I mean, it might be okay, but it might, if you're really making the investment in plastic sleeves, I'd be more inclined to purchase from somewhere that in the product description, like listed, kind of more detailed description than just having kind of one word on a label, So
So it could
you
be
want to,
just acid-free, but it's got to be quality. Is that what you're saying? Or should you definitely go
well, it's got to be
archival?
a certain type of plastic. If you're talking sleeves, or in particular, it's got to be one of the three plastics that are safe
Okay,
for photos. So polyester, polyethylene, or polypropylene. So it at the very least should tell you what type of plastic it is.
Mhm.
And if it's anything else than those three, I wouldn't trust it. So
okay.
looking just a little more detail is helpful when when making those purchasing decisions. Sometimes you'll go to the craft store and you'll see, or the office supply store, and you'll see
Right.
binder pages, or page protectors, and they'll say photo safe, but that's it. So are they really photo safe? Like, I don't know. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, I hope that's helpful.
We have a question from M, and it says, do you know how video digitizing is charged? Hours of video, base price plus hours of video? Does the type of original format affect price?
So
E.g.
I actually, yeah, that's a great question. I actually outsource all of my video conversions. I don't do any of that. And so it really depends on who you're outsourcing it to. For sure, the type of format affects the price, the length, the quality of it, if it's in bad condition or good condition, if it needs repairs. There's lots of factors that go into how people are pricing out video conversion work. So that is a question for whoever you're taking it to. The options here in Rochester, again, I like Media Transfer Service in East Rochester, and that you can also get things digitized from like Row Photo or Scott's Photo on East Ave. Will still do that. They send it out. whereas Media Transfer Service does everything in their lab here in East Rochester. So that's kind of my preference, to keep things local and to not have it be sent out somewhere. So it would depend. There's so many just factors that go into those costs. So
My experience, Kate, has been that film, classic film, 16 or 8 millimeter film is by the foot. It's by the
Yep.
foot. A lot of times magnetic media like audio tapes and video cassettes and things like that, or DVDs, is just by the unit.
Yes. Yes.
In a lot of
Correct.
these places. Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
So we have a couple other questions in the chat. EGM asks, what is the best approach to digitizing slides?
Yes, there are two ways to think about digitizing slides. The first option is that you digitize all the slides that you have, and then look at the nicely digitized images on your computer screen and decide what to keep and what not to keep. Slides can be digitized fairly inexpensively, so that is an option if you don't have thousands of them. Just get it all digitized and then take your time, look at them on the a big screen, your computer screen, and make your decision about what to delete, what to keep. The other option is that you decide what you're keeping before you get things digitized, and that means maybe you have a light box from, if you're a crafter or if you are a photo enthusiast, you have a light box at home. It's a good way to look at slides individually, to see what's on there. You can also take even your phone or a tablet and open up like a blank Word doc or a blank notes page, so you've got a white background, and use that as kind of a makeshift light box. So it can be a little more tedious looking at everything individually, like on a small slide. But if kind of whatever makes sense for how many slides you have, wherever you're getting them digitized, you'll be able to see pricing up front, so you can make that decision about, do I want to just do everything at once and then delete, or do I want to just only digitize the slides that I know I want? So hopefully that answers your question. Is that kind of the angle that you meant?
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll add one thing quickly.
Yeah.
Is that in my experience, digitizing both negatives and slides, I found that I was quite surprised that I was able to see things that back in the days before digitization, I never noticed before. So for instance,
interesting.
6 prints we used to have from our negatives, or they were done pretty poorly back in the day. And there's a surprising amount of detail that the digital versions enable you to see on your large computer screen today that you never saw before. And it can be kind of a heartwarming thing to go back and see stuff like in the house you grew up in that was small in a picture, and all of a sudden you can see it. It's a surprise.
That's great.
It's a surprisingly rewarding process. So
yeah, slides and negatives are really the best original copy of your photos. So if you've got those to scan and digitize as opposed to doing prints, you'll always get a better image than just scanning from a print. So absolutely. Yep.
So we have a question from Jillian McKee. Storage fabric like old lace, plastic, tissue?
Yes, the way that I like to store anything that's kind of fabric is using acid-free boxes, kind of, whether it's a big box that's going to hold a dress, or, or pieces of clothing, or a smaller box if you've got just, some lace handkerchiefs or smaller personal articles you want to preserve. And I just kind of wrap things in acid-free tissue, and just store them, gently. I can stack them gently in the box. I don't want to, fill a box too high so that you're pressing it, things down to put the lid on. So just kind of carefully storing things in tissue. One tip for packing boxes is to kind of do an inventory. A photo inventory is great, but even a written inventory of what you're putting in that box. Slide that in on top of everything, or attach it to the outside of the box. So then you won't have to kind of dig through to know what's in there after you've stored things. So, yeah.
Any other questions from people? Again, don't be afraid to unmute.
I do have a question. I have a lot of stuff from World War II that belonged to my dad, who was a navigator.
Cool.
I have talked to a conservator who can connect me to the new Museum of the Army.
Mhm.
And they've asked me to sort of do an inventory or sort of get it ready.
Mhm. Nice.
Yeah, but when I think of all the cost of, all these archival products, do you think they would be expecting me to do that?
No,
To
no,
get it to
100% no.
them?
No, no, because they're going to have their own storage materials and ways they're going to store things and absolutely they would never expect that of you. I think they're just looking for kind of an inventory, maybe if you put together a list of the items, maybe a brief description. You could do it like the description of also the conditions that they're in, so that they have a baseline of like at this point in time. It was, this was torn, this was faded, this had a stain, whatever the condition is, so that down the road, they'll have something to measure, conditions against. That's important. They'll want that information. So I think just honestly, an inventory, maybe a digital image, a quick image to go along with things, but they definitely will not expect you to have things in archival quality materials stored.
Okay.
No,
And
they'll do that themselves.
Good.
Yes, I know. Don't worry.
I'll add that for our historical society, we don't expect that either. And as a matter of fact, we have our own standards that we have to adhere to, and we would wonder if we can't really know enough about the enclosures that people provide to us on their own. We have to have our own
Yeah.
assurances that the stuff we're using is
Exactly.
what we need. So yeah, I would echo
Yep.
that. We have a thank you from Valerie. Great presentation. Thanks so much. From M, we have another question. Is there a recommended resolution to scan to or format? If space is less of a concern, does higher resolution equate to longer life?
So the resolution, I don't think relates to life. I think the life of a digital image, it really, is dependent on the media that it's stored on, and how many backups you have of it. But I will talk about resolution. If you're scanning prints, the standard is 600 DPI, and you want to, if you really want to make an archival quality image, you want to scan it as a TIFF file, TIFF. That's kind of it's a lossless version of an image. So a JPEG, which we kind of think of as the everyday image file, they as they get saved and downloaded and resaved and compressed and shared, they kind of lose information over time, and so they can become they're a little wonky. And so as a truly archival digital image file, should not be a JPEG, it should be a TIFF. But TIFFs are much larger. They take up a lot more storage space. So if storage is an issue, a 600 DPI JPEG is pretty much fine for kind of just your family's photo collection. But if museums would scan at at TIFF files and save TIFFs, and then usually they'd have a working copy of a JPEG for for web use or print use or whatever. But the TIFF would be the master archival file they don't touch, that they save in their whatever backup system they have. If you're scanning slides, not my forte, but I think 3600 DPI is a kind of baseline for slide scanning. It's much higher because of the format. So just different DPIs for that. So
It's becoming more common to get 6,000 DPI slide scanning.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, really the thing with digital images, like JPEGs are pretty much fine for, family use and sharing and uploading. And they take up way less storage space, and we're all used to, sharing a JPEG on our phone quickly or on, Facebook or whatever. TIFFs you have to reformat if you want to share it. So they are a little bit more cumbersome. But the real bottom line with digital images is making sure that you have things backed up. At a minimum, the photos on your phone should be backed up, to whatever cloud storage, and then the 3-2-1 backup method. There's lots of resources online about how to make that work. So just make sure things are backed up so you don't lose them.
Okay.
Question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Question about transitioning these archival collections. We do all of this work, and then our generation passes. And if you have any thoughts about before you transition, sometimes the families don't want the pictures. They are in a they're just in a mode where they're not collecting. So, any thoughts on transitioning these collections that we spend so much time and effort on?
Yeah, that is a great, I get that question a lot. A lot of people, it seems like feel like their kids or their grandkids are just not interested as much as they are in the family history and don't want to store all these things. And I guess my thoughts are twofold. The more work you can do, kind of consolidating and organizing and, keeping just, the best of the best and using those things to kind of to craft a family story and to make sure that, your legacy and your ancestors and all those things are known and those stories are going to go forward and you've got the photos and the objects to highlight them, but you're not saving 20,000 photos from 5 decades. Nobody wants that, right? They want a curated collection. I think it's up to you to do that curating and do the organizing and the labeling and the saving. Even if you feel like your kids or whatever generation doesn't want it, I feel like you know there for sure is some relative who would want to kind of take ownership of it or be the steward of it going forward. Maybe it's a second cousin or an aunt or an uncle or something, making so there should be hopefully somebody you could pass things on to. And then maybe your grandkids or great grandkids will kind of come back into having interest in this family history again and just knowing that you're doing it for future generations. Maybe you're not doing it for your kids right now, but maybe in 30 years your kids will be so happy you did do it, right? It's kind of a tough thing, but you just have to know that there are future generations that are going to be so thankful that you have saved this and done this work and labeled things and shared these stories. If you just think about how in awe I feel like we probably all are when we hold a photograph from like 1880, right? Or the early 1900s, or a 5 generations back family member, just knowing that somebody's cared and saved that and took the time to write in the back and make sure that it got saved and moved around. And we're so happy to have that done. There will be generations going forward who will be so thankful you have done this work. So it can be frustrating when you feel like your kids don't want it or don't care as much as you, but hopefully you can find someone to be the steward of it for the next generation, and then just knowing that it will be appreciated. I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
I would also mention that if you have pictures that show your house, I would love to have pictures from the other families that were in my house before me.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
so we lived in Minnesota for more than 40 years. And right before we left in 2018, someone rang the doorbell, and it was the family that lived in the house in the 1950s.
Wow.
And they said, "Can we come in?" And I knew who they were because we bought the house from their parents. And they took pictures of inside the clothes chute because somebody had scratched their name on the inside
It's so great.
and
Yeah.
all those kinds of things. And I said, "You have to promise me to send me your stories that happened in the house." And we got a letter a couple weeks later, single spaced. I think it's 3 pages long.
Oh, that's wonderful.
There were 6 kids that grew up in that house, and they were into everything. And it was a wonderful gift. And when we sold our house, we made a copy of that letter for the people
That's
bought the house
wonderful.
from
I
them.
love it. I love it. That's a really nice
So
thing to
it
do.
might not
I
even be
think-
your relatives.
Yeah, no, but just the history of the house.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think that's
here's
such a great
Christmas,
idea.
1968,
Yeah, that's so
you know,
cool.
in the living room. So
Mhm.
anyway, just an
I
idea.
hadn't thought about that, but what a wonderful kind of gift to the future homeowners and to keep up a legacy of a house that's got, had so many layers to it. That's really fun. Great idea.
Gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
M says, thank you very much for your answer. Mike has added a note in here. Wonder if those collections that family isn't interested in get donated to your local historical society.
Absolutely. Always an option.
Yeah, I could tell you that can be an option. I know our historical society is particularly intrigued if the photos are old and they depict buildings or things that people ask questions about. And as time progresses, building photographs or that depict locations that people are curious about are always of interest to us. Always.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Always a good idea to not just drop things off at the Historical Society, but call them first and
Yes, because we don't want everything. We don't want
Yes,
your
exactly.
we don't want your your
I know,
everything in your attic or your basement. Yeah.
yes.
Has to be stuff that the public would wish to see.
Mhm.
It's a good starting point. So,
Yeah.
yep. Excellent question. Excellent note. Thanks, Mike.
Mhm.
Wow, what a lot of questions. This is great. Any others?
What about digitizing, putting the stuff on internet? In other
Mhm.
words, you have family pictures or you have family stories,
Mhm.
and just putting it on the internet. What's your take on that, and where on the internet?
Yeah, there are so many options for that. And if you are somebody who's comfortable kind of, sharing that way, then I think it's a fantastic option. There are services that are kind of, more open, if you will, like, Google Photos or, or any of the social media sites. You're definitely losing some privacy and losing some, some ownership of that information that you're putting on. But there are plenty of apps and websites that are much more protected, where you can, password protect things or just invite particular family and friends to, share photos and stories and videos and things. There's so many options for that. And I think it just makes it so easy to share these things over, over miles, over, with lots of different people. So I'm all for it. But again, some people just aren't comfortable and would rather just, keep that private. And it's really a personal preference. But there are ways to do it without kind of giving away everything that you might, ownership of the photo really when you post something, on social media. So there are ways to share more carefully and kind of in a more curated way. Lots of different apps out there. I can list a couple if you're interested, or maybe if there's do you guys do a follow-up for this? I could list a couple of my favorite kind of safer online sharing sites. If people are interested, I could send that to Drew and have him pass it on.
Great, that'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll include them in the comments for the video.
Oh, great. Yeah. I'll send you a couple things. I have some on top of my head, but I'd want to think about it for a minute to make sure I'm kind of covering my bases.
That sounds great. And feel free to send us the other resources to some of the suppliers that you mentioned in the video. That would be
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I absolutely, there's, I can also send links to, there's like 3 or 4 kind of great archival suppliers that, all online. But yeah, there's, I will send those as well.
We'll
Yep.
consolidate all those when we put them online.
Yes.
Lorraine says, very nice presentation. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
M says, would love to know the online resources. So we'll
Okay.
be sure those are together with the video.
Yeah, I'll put together a list that Drew can share.
Sounds great.
Mhm.
Well, it's 9:02.
Perfect. Thank you all. It was a great conversation, and you're a super audience, and best wishes for a good year for the Historical Society, and looking forward to hearing about, the everything happening. So I'm on the mailing list, so I'll keep in touch.
Excellent. And thank you all very much for your contributions. Yes, applause.
Thank you.
And good luck to your archiving efforts for 2025, everybody. And
Excellent.
have a great winter. See you next month.
All right,
Thank
take care.
Thank
Thank you.